So welcome back everyone. And now we're going to turn our attention to complex carbohydrate. Complex carbohydrate are basically your starch and your fibers. And when we I just want you to remember that your plants store glucose in the form of starch. So it consists of hundreds of thousands of glucose molecules linked together. And you can only find them in your plant-based foods such as your grains, your legumes, and your vegetables. Animal foods does not contain starch. So when we look at this complex carbohydrate map, we see that your polysaccharides can contain anywhere from about 10 to 1,000 of your glucose molecules. And what we also see is that we have, for humans, we store we store the glucose in the form of glycogen. And we have two different types of starches, which is your amylose and your amylopectin. We also have fibers, and those things, we cannot digest your fibers. So if you remember when we talk about your disaccharides, it's basically your two monosaccharides that join together and they release water. So this process keeps going on and on and on, and they keep connecting until they form just a thousands, or usually it's about 3,000 glucose molecules. And also kind of remembering the fact that animal food does not actually produce any starch. And starch is a type of polysaccharide, and we have two different kinds, which is your amylose and your amylopectin. So we have the amylose, which is a straight chain, and your amylopectin, which is your highly branched chain. So kind of think of the types of food that you eat, your starchy vegetables, your potatoes, carrots, cereal, pasta, rice. Basically, we see that about 20% of those starches that exist comes from your amylose, and the other 80%, it's your amylopectin. And I also have a question over here. Is amylopectin in a digestible form of carbohydrate? And I'll let you guys think about this, and I have the answers underneath. So we also have, when we look at this, the structure, but you won't need to remember the structure. We just look at your glucose and how it's a straight chain between your amylopectin and glycogen. They are both branch chain, but your glycogen is a lot more branch. And glycogen is only found in humans, but your amylose and amylopectin are found in your plant-based foods. So what is glycogen? And basically that is the storage form of glucose in your body. And when your body, the first thing is when you consume a carbohydrate-rich food, a meal, your body will use that carbs and break it down into glucose to meet your immediate needs of our body. And any excess then will convert that glucose and store it in the form of glycogen for future use. And so your liver and muscles are the only organs that are equipped to store glycogen, and they act as a carbohydrate bank. So when your blood sugars are low, the liver will then release a hormone to convert your glycogen into your glucose. And that's what we call your glucagon hormone, and we will talk about this later. And so we want to maintain our blood glucose levels, especially when we talk about, meeting the needs, the energy needs, our brain needs it, our central nervous system all rely on glucose as our main source of energy. So now we move on to fibers. And when we talk about your fibers in your nutritional fat panel, basically they're both your soluble and your insoluble fibers. And we know that plant-based food, it's only in plant-based food that you can find your fibers. And no animal food contains fibers. For humans, we need fibers, but we cannot digest fibers. We also have another thing called functional fibers. And this is used in your food products. It's good as a thickening agent, and we also use them for desserts and for building texture. But also remember the fact that your polysaccharides, your starches, are very different from your fiber. This is because of the chemical bonds that join these individual sugar units, and they cannot be digested in the gastrointestinal tract. So this prevents your small intestines from absorbing the sugar because they cannot be released from the really fibrous forms. So fibers basically, they are substances that have a very, very similar characteristic, very, very good health promoting characteristics. So Now, when we talk about cellulose, it's an insoluble fiber that is always found in the outer layers of your skin, of your fruits. And when we talk about soluble fiber, on the other hand, those are the inner parts of your, the fleshy parts of your fruits. And again, you only find fibers in your beans, your peas, and your lentils, your fruits, and your nuts and seeds. So a lot of your insoluble fiber is concentrated on the skins of the fruits, and the fleshy part of the fiber, that is where you will find your soluble fine fiber. And I will take a little bit more time to talk about the difference between your soluble and insoluble fiber. But just to remember that, when we look at your wheat as well, when we're talking about your where can we find your insoluble fibers, they are also on the outer layers of your whole grains. This is the different dietary sources in which you can find your soluble and insoluble fibers. But I didn't need you to remember the different names, just to kind of remember that which types of food, like your oats, barley, nuts, and seeds, are high in soluble fiber. When we talk about insoluble fiber, those are your whole wheats, your whole grain, your different kinds of vegetables. And just, I want you to be able to name a few, because, both your soluble and your insoluble fibers have multiple functions in your body. And we want them in the right amounts as well. So when talking about soluble fibers, okay, I'm just going to give you an overview and why is it really important health-wise to have your fibers. So your soluble fibers, they really absorb a lot of water. And for example, when you think of an apple or an oatmeal, those things are really high in soluble fibers. And when your soluble fiber hits the stomach, it absorbs a lot of water. And this helps you to feel full for a longer period of time because it expands and expands, and the water is so heavy. And it forms this huge block of gel in your stomach. It might sound gross, but you want this gel formation. So it's and this gel will basically keep on expanding and it fills up the stomach and it helps to stretch out your stomach walls. And your stretch receptors will tell the hunger center the hunger center in your body to go in, and it goes to your brain to turn that off. So it tells you that you are full. And that's what soluble fibers does. Okay, it helps with your appetite because it helps with food intake regulation. It helps with preventing people from being overweight. And a lot of these foods these days, we notice, is stripped of your fiber content. And so this fiber water gel blob that forms in your stomach really slows down your stomach emptying. And this food takes a longer time to move from your stomach into your small intestine, and it also helps to absorb more nutrients in your bloodstream. So any glucose or monosaccharide that may be absorbed from your apple or oatmeal, basically the that monosaccharide or that glucose from that absorption is going to be delayed. And this is more desirable physiologically, but if you eat Cocoa Puffs and it's made up from your white flour and the bran and fiber has been removed so it has very little fiber, when you eat maybe that breakfast cereal and there's no fiber, it's not going to form a gel in your stomach. And so your stomach emptying is going to be really short. And basically, the Cocoa Puffs just move from your stomach to your small intestines, and your glucose is absorbed a lot more rapidly. And you see this huge blood sugar spike in your blood levels. And that is not physiologically desirable. So it's very, very important for a diabetes patient to consume more soluble fibers because it slows down the glucose absorption and it helps you feel full for a longer period of time. Here is another great effect of your soluble fiber. This is an effect why products like Cheerios can boost the claim that cereal can help lower blood cholesterol levels and is heart healthy. The effect of soluble fiber happens in the small and especially large intestines. It might be a good idea to check your textbooks on the basic parts of the digestive tract. But first of all, you need to understand your bile acids. Bile acids are made by your liver and they are stored in your gallbladder. When you eat a meal with fat in it, then your liver and gallbladder will dump some bile acids into the small intestines. You need bile acids in your small intestines to help you digest and absorb fat. So now, bile acids are so important that your body can reabsorb that bile acid back into your liver and gallbladder to reuse them after your next meal. So just one of the things our bodies can recycle and reuse. If you eat a meal which has high amounts of fiber, and that's a good thing to do, bile still does its job in helping you to absorb that fat and fat-soluble vitamins. But then the fiber binds with some of the bile acids and they form this fiber bile acid complex that leaves the body with the stool. If more bile went out with the stool, then less bile is reabsorbed to be reused. This means that the liver must make more bile, and the liver uses cholesterol to make bile. When the liver makes more bile from cholesterol, this helps to lower your blood cholesterol levels and reduces your risk of heart disease. And if you kind of look at, the typical diet of a US of American, the amount of intake of fiber is only about 16 grams per day, and that is way too low. We're supposed to get about 25 to 35 grams or even more. So let's say the meal you ate did not have a lot of fiber. The bile is released into the small intestines, and it does its thing to help absorb fat and fat-soluble vitamins. Now, there is not much fiber to bind to the bile acids. And so most of the bile acids are reabsorbed back to the liver and gallbladder. There's very few bile acids that go out with the stool. And so this is another reason why, in terms of eating more fibrous food, we want that because, it can help to lower your blood cholesterol levels. And when you have that high fiber-rich food, your liver is not going to make more bile. So here's a diagram that really talks about the important effect of your fiber, all kind of summarized. So now we move on to the next part, which is your insoluble fiber. And similarly, like your soluble fiber, they both of it can swell up like a sponge in your body. And remember that our bodies are not able to digest fiber, and we rely on bacteria to help us digest that fiber. So when you consume a meal that has a large amount of fiber, your insoluble fiber, it's going to form it's going to hang on to your water like a sponge. And it's this fiber water complex that forms in your large intestines, which is particularly the last 5 feet of your intestines, where it's responsible for the size of your stools and also for the softness of your stools. And basically what we want is to have your stools that are larger and softer, because if you have small and hard ones, those are what we call, you're having constipation. And we want to prevent constipation from happening and reduce any form of hemorrhoids and we know that hemorrhoids causes bleeding. And so that's why your insoluble fiber really helps to promote that faster transit time. And generally speaking, you want a transit time of about 24 to about 48 hours on average. But most American and Westerners, it could be anywhere from about 72 hours to about 5 days without using the restroom. And that's really causes a lot of problems, especially with hemorrhoid and constipation. And you put a lot more pressure on your bowels. And so we really want to consume more insoluble fibers to help with faster transit times and to also keep your intestinal walls healthy, to also help to keep your intestines healthy. Also, usually, if you want to understand what hemorrhoids are, they are swollen, expanded tiny blood vessels in the rectal area in the large intestines. So after repeated periods of constipation with that increased pressure on your bowel movement, this is when your hemorrhoids can develop. So again, from this slide, we're just summarizing and like looking back on another really important effect of fiber. And both soluble and insoluble fiber has this effect. Remember that bacteria lives in your intestines and they love to eat fiber. So as bacteria breaks down this fiber, and this is what we call fermenting fiber, the bacteria produces a byproduct referred to your short chain fatty acids. It turns out that these short-chain fatty acids have beneficial health effects. These short-chain fatty acids decrease the pH of the large intestines, and this is desirable as a slightly more acidic large intestine is associated with reduced risk of colon cancer. The short-chain fatty acids inhibit tumor formation and they also keep the colon healthy. Of course, with something as complex as colon cancer, I do not want in any way to suggest that the simple answer to colon cancer is fiber. Colon cancer is much more complex, and there are many factors that can influence a person's risk to colon cancer, but this is just one of the many factors. And I want you, and we kind of look at this, the amount of fiber that you can find in your different types of food. And we can see that the breakdown of your soluble, what's the total fiber, what is the soluble fiber, and what is your insoluble fiber. And if we kind of look at, your white bread and how little fiber is present inside, but if we look at your fruits, we see that there are a lot more fibers also in your vegetables, your nuts, your seeds. And fiber-rich food, especially when we go back looking at your Mediterranean, your Asian, your Latin American food pyramids, note that how these populations consume a lot of beans and legumes as part of their daily diets. While if you look at your My Plate, on the other hand, the bean groups are grouped together with your protein, with your meats, your eggs, your fish, your beans, and your nuts and seeds. And this is very typical of the Westerners, kind of satisfying your protein category by consuming meats. But there is there is a lot of protein in your beans and your legumes. And one of the easiest ways to get your daily fill of fiber is to include beans in your daily diet. Beans also have a lot of great vitamins and minerals. You can use them in your veggie, you can use them in your salads, you can also use them in your soups or casseroles. And also, again, kind of noting that plant-based food items, that your fiber can only be found in your plant-based food items because your animals cannot synthesize fibers. So what I want to look at here is just kind of looking at what happens for how does food processing affect your fibers. And if you look at this, your apples actually have about 5 grams of fibers in your skin. But when you look at applesauce, and that's the processed version, it only has about 2 grams of fibers. And if you look at juicing, only 0.2 grams of fibers that are present. And remember that applesauce is made by removing the skin, and that removes a lot of the fibers. 100% fruit juices have vitamins and minerals, some that are left behind, but the whole fruit, all the fibers have kind of been stripped away. And so, kind of emphasizing again, whole fruits and vegetables are ideal because they contain your vitamins and minerals and your fibers. And I'm going to end here.